I want to ask you a baseball question before we get to the football stuff. I want to know what you think about the news that has broken in the past hour. The Major League Players Association president and executive director has resigned now, and you look at what that could do. Tony Clark was the executive director, and because of the labor impasse that we are expecting and the CBA expiring, from your perspective as a lawyer, not getting too in the weeds, but just generally speaking, how does that complicate getting a deal done and the negotiations that we were thought to would be resume or begin on opening day historically? How much does that complicate this and maybe take it the pace and slow it down?
Oh, it creates a huge mess because how can the unions speak as one voice unless and until they know who that voice is? Who's basically driving the bus here as they go into these negotiations? The NFLPA has been dealing with that since last summer when Lloyd Howell resigned. They've yet to appoint a permanent executive director. I think the NFL quietly, but not all that patiently waiting for a new executive director so the NFL can commence, I believe, aggressively the process of working out a new CBA. I reported last week that the league hasn't picked a date for the Super Bowl to be held in 2 years in Atlanta because they're holding open the possibility of an 18-game season as soon as 2027. That means the NFL wants to get to work on coming to an agreement ASAP. So even with 5 years left for the NFL and the NFLPA, it's a problem to not have someone in charge of the union. If you're closing in on the expiration of a CBA, that's a major, major problem for the Major League Baseball Players Association.
Mike, getting back to football, obviously we've seen some cuts happening already with Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. In your mind, those were the first dominoes, but are we about to see, a league-wide veteran purge over the next 10 days?
We see this every year, and there are many of them that are expected. Some are surprises. The question is, will a team make the move now and give the player a head start on free agency, or will the move happen when the new league year begins? With Bradley Chubb, for example, that's going to be delayed. It wasn't announced yesterday by the Dolphins because there's a cap reality that comes into play. If a guy's got multiple years left on his contract, you designate him as a post-June 1 release, you have to cut him after the league year begins. But everybody knows he's going to be out there, and that's useful because next week when everyone's in Indianapolis, that's when the tampering begins. That's when the negotiations happen, whether you're already on the market, whether it's known you're going to be. So this is the process of the planets aligning, teams taking care of business before they focus on the work to be done next week in Indy. And we'll hear more names, and many of them will have been expected, but this is just part of what happens every year when it's time for teams to make decisions about what their team is going to look like in the coming season and beyond.
Last year, I think 2 players were tagged. This year, I'd be curious if you think there will be more than that. The Seahawks are unlikely to tag Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III, even though it would be a fairly modest 1-year, $14 million commitment. That's not a salary that you think is exorbitant necessarily like it is, say, at the safety position where you look at the Bears and their decisions, and that would be absurd to pay that to Jaquan Brisker. But, Mike, overall, throughout the league, how busy of a day do you think it will be today? And what do you think about the Seahawks' decision to lean away, according to Adam Schefter, and not tag Kenneth Walker III?
Well, I think there's multiple levels to that. First of all, the fact that they're unlikely to do it. But second, their decision to leak it on the first day of the 2-week window. They're sending messages. I think one message to the fan base is, hey, don't get your hopes up that we're going to apply the tag here. We all need to understand where we are. 1 year, $14 million. This is a guy who made $8.4 million over 4 seasons as a second-round draft pick. There are so many running backs every year who come into the draft. You can find someone young, cheap, and healthy who can come in and play right away, and I think the Seahawks are going to be inclined to do that. The other message, I think, is maybe Kenneth Walker's representation has been asking for way too much, and the Seahawks think, hey, good luck. Go find it from someone else because we're not going to pay that on a long-term deal. That's the biggest problem a team can get into. Overpaying a guy for things he's already done and not paying him accurately for what you expect him to do in the future. You can't let 3 great postseason games cloud everything you've picked up in 4 years with Kenneth Walker and the understanding of where you are right now as you go forward. They're going to have Jackson Smith and Jigba ready to get a market level deal. He's the offensive player of the year from 2025 and the key player in that offense. They're going to have other players they want to try to keep like Rashid Shaheed. So it makes sense to me that they're doing it. Now, as it relates to the league at large, we'll see what happens. Last year was the lowest since 2006. The highest we've seen was 21 in 2012. We'll probably be closer to 2 than 21, but we'll see. And look, what matters is the last day of the tag window, not the first day. The only reason a team would tag a guy this week is to make sure everybody next week in Indianapolis knows, don't waste your time trying to tamper with our guy because we've squatted on him as a franchise tag player. He's not going to be available on the first day of free agency.
Are there any, tag red flags where, maybe tagging a player usually backfires? Because there are, you mentioned the pros, but there are, cons, right? There are fears associated where, you tag somebody that hates it, like you mentioned with Kenneth Walker, or not tagging somebody and setting off some sort of bidding war.
Well, look, every player should hate being tagged. I remember early in the life of this thing that they labeled a franchise tag, there was a weird sense that it was some sort of an honor. That's baloney. It restricts you from getting the long-term deal on the open market that you have earned. And it puts you in place for one more year at an amount, and it's hard to get fans to sympathize with this, even with Kenneth Walker. Oh, $14 million. Oh, let's have a bake sale for the guy. But the reality is he's earned the ability to go to the market and get the biggest number he can. And he will, because he won't be tagged, most likely. But for guys who are tagged, like George Pickens, he's not going to be happy with $28 million, and he shouldn't be. The market's at $40 million. He was a second-team All-Pro. As the season went on, he became the guy that defenses were using extra resources to slow down instead of CeeDee Lamb, who's making $34 million a year, or $35. I got to look up the number to get it right. But Pickens is being robbed if he's tagged, if he's shot at going out there and getting paid by one of those teams every year. And there's teams that have that drunken sailor vibe. We can't win in the regular season, so let's win in March. Let's go out and get a player. Let's get fans excited. Let's get them to renew season tickets and buy jerseys and talk about us in March. And teams make bad football decisions that they think are good business decisions. The franchise tag keeps players from having a chance to make that kind of crazy, stupid money that they've earned the right to go get. So I don't like the franchise tag. The players don't like the franchise tag, but the teams love it. It's not going anywhere. It's been around for over 30 years, and it'll probably still be here 30 years from now.
Big week for the Stadium Project news here in Chicago, Mike. The Bears move forward. Kevin Warren, the team president, is watching his great niece in Italy compete in the Olympic speed skating. Back here in Illinois, on Thursday morning, the Bears bill is set for a hearing. On Wednesday, Governor Pritzker will address, in a State of the State address, likely the Bears Stadium issue and where it is in his mind. How significant do you think this week is in the context of the Bears Stadium movement?
Well, it's funny. Jay Cutler is from Santa Claus, Indiana, and Indiana is playing the Santa Claus for the Bears as it relates to Illinois, because there's nothing like having another state step up to the plate with real money or the possibility of real money to wake up Illinois. That finally did it. It was years of not getting any real cooperation from Illinois. Here comes Indiana. Illinois is interested in getting something done. Oh, Iowa's out there too. Hell, Idaho should get involved so we can cover all of the I states for the Bears. But that's what this all is. And they don't want us to think of it that way. They don't want us to think of football as a business. It is a business. Look, wouldn't it be better for the Bears to stay at Soldier Field indefinitely? Yes. But it's a business. They want a new stadium, and they want a stadium that don't have a dome, and they want to make all the money that they can from Final Fours and concerts all year round, yada, yada, yada. That's all this is. And it's a game of chess, high level, and the Bears have finally put Illinois in check. We don't know whether it's checkmate. It's close to checkmate, but they finally got him in check. They finally got him to respond and make a move, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Interesting, the chess match, the chess match that's happening right now between the Bears and obviously the state of Illinois, but something we'll be watching closely. When you're talking about the team specifically, Mike, David alluded to it a second ago, and it is the free agent situation for the Chicago Bears when it comes to their safeties, not just Jaquan Brisker, but also Kevin Byard. What do you think? I mean, Kevin Byard made $7.5 million last year, had obviously an amazing season. but he's a little bit older. When you're thinking about the two guys, where do you think their numbers range at? Like, is Kevin Byard going to be expected to make the same amount of money, a little bit higher because he got the All-Pro nod, or excuse me, Pro Bowl nod? Jaquan Brisker, a young guy having a great season. Like, I'm trying to wrap my brain around whether the Bears can get one of them back, and if they are to get one, what that number will look like for either one of them.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to the point where I've actually crunched numbers and thought about what guys are going to get. Here's the reality. And we used to see this more. I remember when the Cowboys had their dynasty team in the 90s and free agency was getting started. I felt like then other teams prioritized stealing their players to break them up. I don't get the impression teams do that now, but the Bears are going to be a candidate like, hey, let's knock the Bears down before they get a little too big for their britches. Let's take some of their guys. Let's target their guys. If you're other teams in the division, other teams in the conference, let's take some steam out of the Bears defense by maybe overpaying guys that we just want to get away from Chicago. And it may be that they have to target maybe Brisker. And then you go out there and you see if you can find another veteran to come in and do what Byard did. How much of it is the system? How much of it is the player? How much of it is what the front seven is doing? It's a lot easier to play safety when the other defensive players are getting it done. So it's a complicated puzzle that every team's got to put together. The only good news for the Bears is they got one more year of not having to pay Caleb Williams. So they need to make the most out of the fact that they'll have extra cap space and extra dollars, because Caleb Williams is going to be knocking on the door after the 2026 season expecting a contract that's going to be up near the top quarterbacks in the game, especially if he keeps playing like he has. So, we've heard that in the past. We've seen that in the past. The years that you have before you have to pay your quarterback, this is the last year for the Bears to take advantage of that before it's time to pay Caleb Williams.
Mike, got to follow up. Last week, I asked you to amplify the issue with the Bears and Ian Cunningham going to the Falcons. They did not get the compensatory picks that I feel like they deserved in the name of the Rooney Rule. Matt Ryan, the chief decision maker there, even though he said Ian's running the show, the league thought differently. Did you get any feedback? Is this still pending?
I asked the league to explain, to first confirm and then explain, because when the Falcons hired their last general manager, Terry Fontenot, in 2022, the Saints, where he had served as assistant general manager, got the compensatory draft picks. So why is it different now if you're hiring a GM from a team where he was assistant GM? And what the league said is you get the compensatory picks for head coach and primary football executive. And the league has decided that Matt Ryan is the primary football executive. And as one GM from another team explained it to me, this may just be a situation where Matt Ryan is trying to straddle the fence here. If things go well, I'm in charge. If they don't, well, Ian Cunningham's the one that made the decisions on free agency and the draft. But as the league sees it, Matt Ryan is in charge of that team, regardless of what he says, regardless of what he's delegated. Matt Ryan's in charge. That's the way the league explained it. The Bears may not like it, fans may not like it, but that's how the league tiptoed through that minefield, because last time around, when Fontenot got the job, he was the primary guy. This time around, they've restructured things. Ryan, the president of football operations, a job they didn't have 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it was, maybe 4 years ago. He's the guy now who's in charge.
I mean, those picks are important for the Bears. I mean, this is a team that, has aspirations to go a little deeper in the playoffs. Third round picks certainly can help out in that. And they have some pending free agents, whether it's Braxton Jones, the safeties that I mentioned, Mike. So how should the Bears balance that win now approach and protecting the books between the draft and obviously their pending free agents?
Well, look, the draft is critical for any team because it allows you to go out and get 7 or more based upon trades, or less based upon trades, young guys who are cheap. The rookie wage scale that they put in place in 2011 puts a premium on maximizing your young players that you bring in, you develop, and you hope they perform, because dollar for dollar, they are much cheaper than going out and signing an accomplished veteran player who's proven he can get it done. And you have that guy for 4 years, 5 with the franchise tag, 5 years if he's a first-round pick. Those draft picks are critical. And as you get to a point where you're closing in on making a huge financial investment in your long-term quarterback, those draft picks become critical. That's why, and I say this all the time, and I believe it, the Deshaun Watson transaction was the single worst move in NFL history, because Not only did you tie up $230 million fully guaranteed, you gave up 3 first-round picks, 3 other picks. Those would have been young, cheap players that would now be the nucleus of a Browns team, assuming the picks were used wisely on players who turn into contributors. Those guys would be fueling the entire Browns team. Now they got nothing. They don't have the young players. They've got nothing out of Watson. That shows how you can get your things skewed if you don't fully keep, prioritize, and hit on those picks. Those become the future of your team.
Mike, Ian O'Connor wrote a column on John Harbaugh after sitting down with him, and it revealed that Joe Schoen, the general manager, essentially is a scout. He's running scouting operation with the Giants. It also reported that Don Aponte will report to Harbaugh. In your memory, can you think of an NFL head coach that has been any more powerful in terms of the hierarchy within an organization than John Harbaugh is with the Giants right now?
Well, there have been some. Bill Belichick got to that point, but he didn't have that immediately. And the idea that Harbaugh has completely turned the structure upside down with the Giants, and it's not his fault. He took advantage of the leverage that he had. An owner told me before Harbaugh was hired by anyone, right after he got fired by the Ravens, Harbaugh is going to have more leverage than any coaching candidate has had in decades. So one way to use that leverage is to say, give me a lot of money. The other way to use it is to say, this is what I want. And even though he didn't force Joe Schoen out, remember, Schoen was the guy who was going to be making the hire. Schoen was the guy who was still in charge. The Giants for decades have had GM above the coach. Now, ostensibly, GM and coach are on the same plane. But with Don Aponte, whose duties are all front office type duties, reporting to Harbaugh, she becomes shadow GM, reporting to Harbaugh, and also interacts with Schoen, and will, if Harbaugh chooses to do this after the 2026 season, you go to ownership and say, hey, we've made a lot of progress, but if we really want to get to the next level, we need to get a different GM. How about Don Aponte? How about someone else? But I feel like the wheels are already in motion for Harbaugh to, a year from now at the earliest, 2 years from now at the latest, be fully and completely in charge of that football operation.